Hey everybody, welcome to our new Skewed and Reviewed Skewedcast. This is Gareth, and I'm joined as always with Justin and Michael. We decided to do the show Saturday night because there's something happening on CBS tomorrow that I guess is preempting a lot of TV shows and changing things around. So we figured we should probably do it today just to make sure that we didn't get in the way of anybody's parties, anybody's plans, and also all the trailers, because once they finish airing, we're obviously going to be getting them and trying to post them as quick as they're sent to us. So we figured, here you go. So if you haven't already checked us out, you can go to our page at sknr.net. I do a weekly radio segment on KISW-FM on BJ Shea's Geek Nation, which you can check out on our page as well as theirs, KSW.com. We have a quarterly magazine, which the next issue is out in March. And then, of course, I do we do, for the 8 papers in the Pinal Central network of papers. You just type in pinalcentral.com, keyword skewed, and you will see them. I've got my review for Alien Blackout is the featured story this week, so look forward to that. And we cover all things pop culture, from games, movies, television, hardware, travel, entertainment, theme parks, and of course conventions and more. So this week we have a lot of great stuff to talk about, and we're going to start off with 2 big pieces of gaming news. One is a rumor and one is solid facts. So the first thing we're going to start with is the brand new game from EA and BioWare, Anthem, which is currently, as we record this, in its open demo. You can play it on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. The demo is live right now through the end of the day Sunday, so you may want to check that out. I had played the alpha before. I was under a really strict embargo, couldn't really talk about it, so my comments are based strictly on this current open version that is out there. So why don't we start with you, Michael? Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on what the game is and why people should be interested in this one?
So Anthem is the kind of the new release coming out that's done by BioWare. Not really their forte typically. They're a lot more into role-playing type games and that sort of thing. So this is kind of their first foray into the online shooting sort of Destiny type game. Allows you, that's, online multiplayer, first person shooter, scientific setting, science fiction setting, very similar to Destiny in a lot of regards. Again, not really their foray, their forte, and it's kind of the first foray into doing this sort of thing. So I know the demo has had a couple of glitches, trouble, some issues with folks being able to get in and get access to it, that sort of thing, which is kind of expected in something that's kind of open world-ish when it comes to this type of genre. But anyways, it's been a big release for a while. Again, trying to be their Destiny competition. So I'm looking forward to playing it. I have not had a chance to play the demo yet, due to other things that I've had come up. But I am looking forward to it, and we're looking forward to releasing this in the next couple of weeks, I think.
Okay. And very soon, actually. It's coming up very, very soon. Now, Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the concerns that people have had and some of the feedback, and maybe tell us, as somebody who's a little more on the outside looking in, what your take on it is. Excitement or indifference, or where are you with it?
Yeah, so like Michael, I haven't actually played the demo. And yes, I do kind of have an outsider's perspective on this. I am intrigued by the game and the idea, and I won't really focus so much on the more technical concerns people have had, because we kind of covered that in the last podcast. And, frankly, a lot of times those kind of technical things that are, maybe netcode based, or it's safe to say that a lot of that kind of stuff can and will be fixed via patches. So to focus on a few of the other concerns, I guess one of my issues with Anthem as it stands right now And I definitely have an open mind to it. I'm very intrigued by the idea. I've been a huge fan of BioWare's work in the past, and just to be clear on it, this is BioWare proper's first game. I believe it's the same team as Mass Effect 3. Of course, BioWare also works extensively on the Dragon Age franchise, but their two main teams kind of flipped back and forth between Dragon Age and Mass Effect. Mass Effect Andromeda was not developed by one of the main BioWare teams. This was a completely separate studio that later got the BioWare name on top of it. So this is a kind of like, it's almost like thinking of this is their follow-up to Mass Effect 3 in a sense, because supposedly this is the same team, or at least largely the same team that developed Mass Effect 3. And like Michael said, this is kind of their first foray into this kind of idea, this kind of genre. Mass Effect sort of played with the third-person shooter. It was a third-person shooter, but it was much heavier on its plot and its RPG elements. This definitely looks like an answer to Destiny. And, you kind of look back at Destiny, and it was a similar situation in which, of course, Bungie had developed shooters in the past before Destiny, but creating that kind of large open world environment with RPG elements and some like light MMO elements, that was all kind of new to Bungie as a studio. So, people were a little mixed on Destiny when it first came out, and I wonder if Anthem is going to kind of have some similar situations, because when I look at Anthem, one of my main concerns is that it looks like a very polished experience and it looks very fun, but I feel like as it stands right now, the setting isn't very inspiring to me. There's nothing that really hooks me into it, if that makes sense. It looks unique and it looks fun. It looks like Iron Man plus, Destiny. But and I like Destiny and I like Iron Man, but it doesn't really have that same hook, like plot wise, that the Mass Effect series had. And one thing I've been wondering lately is Mass Effect did such a great job with world building, a very engaging world with very engaging creatures and very engaging plots. And it was a very large universe. So my thought was, why didn't EA go the route, or why didn't BioWare go the route of creating a story in the Mass Effect universe, maybe smaller scale, maybe, kind of do this idea of a game, an open world kind of shared experience in the Mass Effect universe. The Citadel alone was big enough to tell endless stories, and they wouldn't really have had to do the legwork of creating a whole new universe. So that's kind of my chief concern right now, is whether the plot and the setting and the world is going to be engaging enough for me. But I do have an open mind about it, and at the very least, the gameplay does look fun and polished.
I think the big issue that with your idea, Justin, was that when Mass Effect Andromeda didn't get the reception that they were hoping for, I think you saw a lot of people kind of throw up their hands. The DLC kind of went bye-bye for it. And I think it was a case of that became a very loud and clear, maybe it's time to shift away from the universe. So, who knows at what early stage, maybe this was in one form, maybe it was a simplified version of what you were talking about that was spun into something else. I had my concerns when I first started playing it. I got a very strong sense of it's Destiny 2 with Titanfall elements to it, meaning, you have I had similar experiences to what Destiny was, with the exception of the mech. It's not a giant mech, but you are in a power suit, so I kind of got the mech combat. you got the Guardian in Destiny with the helmet and the face and everything like this. You have the tank classes, Jaeger class, and it was kind of like, all right, I'm seeing some similarities here. But the more I played it, the more I really started to enjoy it. And what I really have enjoyed about the demo is the world is very big. Now, there are things naturally. I mean, I did have a crash loading into a mission, but the next time in, I did 47 minutes straight, got the video up on the site, no problems at all. I like the fact that it had, it was very easy to go off and do my own thing or to randomly meet up with other people. I found people to be very helpful and willing to add support, revive other players, even if they weren't in their party, drop ammunition off to random strangers. There were a lot of things in there that aren't set, like, there's going to be a marketplace and a recycling, crafting and that sort of stuff. And I'm sure there'll be some trading and it will evolve a bit over time. But it's a very ambitious project and I'm enjoying it. And I definitely, there are some things I look at and I go, I kind of don't like the menu. When I go to launch, it's like, all right, I can get into the random stuff, but the missions and all that, I hope it's a little easier to assign that part and do that. But again, these are things that'll be addressed over time. I think the biggest thing that I would wonder is, are people going to actually wait until they play it? Or you have all these people that said, oh, I heard the demo last week had a lot of bugs in it. So I've seen a lot of comments online from people saying, oh, it's got a lot of bugs. It's got this. Oh, it's EA. I'm going to wait. And it's like, no, I think there's a solid foundation for a very good game. And I might even go so far as to say a very good franchise here. The biggest thing is it's going to have a stable launch, and I think people are going to have to be patient, give it a try. Now, talking about new franchises and rumors, we mentioned Titanfall, and now there's a rumor that a new Titanfall game that is going to be completely free is going to debut possibly as early as this Monday, and I've even heard that there might be a trailer/announcement during the game tomorrow. And that apparently is a new Titanfall game called Apex Legends. Now, apparently this has been leaked out earlier today. Apparently the trademark has been registered. And what we're hearing is that it is a Titanfall Battle Royale game and that you don't have the giant mech combat, but you do the first-person shooter ground portion, but you have enhanced abilities through your suit. So, Justin, what do you take of this?
I think just by the nature of the way this is kind of going down, it's not like we're taking E3 to announce this is this is the future of the Titanfall franchise. We're announcing this game and it's coming out on Monday. I mean, we don't actually know if that's exactly what's going to happen, but that is the current rumor. So assuming that's true, I can kind of foresee some people thinking or having some concerns about, oh, is this really what the Titanfall franchise is turning into? Is it just going to be like a free to play kind of like smaller title? Are we not going to get a full sequel? But I think honestly, you can look at it as a positive that if they're kind of willing to just do a very surprising, like, hey, here's this game, and by the way, you can play it now. It's actually a good sign that EA has some, at least certainty about this franchise, and if it's successful, then fantastic. I know that some people are going to be concerned about the lack of the large mechs because that's kind of one of the big draws of Titanfall. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Titanfall and Titanfall 2. But I think right now Respawn is very focused on their Star Wars title. So hopefully the EA, this is kind of one of their, maybe smaller scale projects. Maybe it's going to be a bit of a surprise for us. And if it's successful enough, maybe Respawn can return to Titanfall 3 and do like a full-fledged sequel. I think the one thing people should keep in mind is that this might not be indicative of what this franchise is turning into, but maybe just see it as a spin-off.
And Michael, what is your take on this, please?
Well, I was a huge fan of the Titanfall series. I think Titanfall 2 is one of the most overlooked games that came out. Was that 2017? Essentially, I think it was fun to play. It had a lot of unique mechanics to it outside of just the Titans. The pilots had a lot of overpowered abilities that they could do as well. Story-wise, it was fantastic. I'm excited because they're talking about, not only is it talking about being free to play, but they're also saying they're going to do potentially some sort of microtransactions, but it sounds like they're going to be more like Overwatch ones. So they're going to be cosmetic based. They're going to be based more on colors and suits and outfits and that sort of thing. And I'm fine with that. I'm not somebody who will buy those kind of things, but I do think if people are given that opportunity, they choose to partake in that, then I'm 100% okay with that. As long as it doesn't impact the ability to play the game, it doesn't impact your ability to win the game. I'm excited for it. Kind of like what Justin was saying, without the Titans in that universe, I'm excited because I like the universe. The Titans are kind of the draw for the first two. I mean, it's in the title, for crying out loud. So it was really the draw for the first two games. I certainly don't think they have to be there because, again, particularly for Titanfall 2, the pilot mechanics were so good that it made for a good, fast-paced shooting experience.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, what I hope is that this will, they're using this as a way to generate excitement to see what the interest is in the Titanfall brand, and potentially gauging for either this being a spin-off leading up to Titanfall 3, or maybe this is to generate enough buzz about the world of Titanfall so that if the plan is to release a Titanfall 3, it actually becomes gets a lot more press and buzz than Titanfall 2 did. Because again, a completely underrated game, didn't get the amount of folks playing it that it deserved. Again, really unfortunate because I think the gameplay is fantastic.
I would like to know if you're going to get to do wall walking in the zip line.
I would assume so. I think that's one of the things that makes the pilot class so mobile, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to be able to do things that allowed them to have some sort of impact outside the mech. So I would assume that's kind of the draw, I hope. Anyways.
Yeah, for me, I don't enjoy the aspect of one and done. That's because I tend to have a more adventurous, aggressive style of play, and nothing frustrates me more than you're out playing and some genius who's camping on the other side of the map takes you out. But if they do similar to what Call of Duty has done with Black Ops 4 and Blackout, where you can have a team, where you can have a 4-person team, where they're apparently going to experiment with allowing your teammates to revive you once, maybe a couple of times throughout the match. And, I like the idea of like the three of us and maybe one other person running around, taking names. So you can literally say, I'm going to be an idiot and I'm going to run down here with my grenade and my machine gun. But here you are with your ranged weapon. You can sit there and cover us while we go down there. Or, I'm going to run around like crazy, try to flush the people out. And if you want to flank them and sneak up, add a little bit of fun to it. So it's not just you because, turns into, even in the Hunger Games where it was only one winner, they still had alliances, which always cracked me up because it's like, how can you trust somebody that is going to take you out? But, part of the fun. So,
well, that being said, one thing to add to that is it would be cool to have a PUBG type game that has Titans, so you can take a lot of damage and still survive and come back and win the game. So I would be, if they did add Titans to this, I would be really more excited about it.
I just thought of the horrible thing that the cynics are going to come out and say, well, it's EA, so Titans will be a microtransaction.
Right.
It's like, hey, you're getting your butt kicked, but if you want a Titan for $5.
Right.
But, my big thing is, all right, fine. I will call in the Titan, but I want two things. Number one, when Titanfall happens, I want to be able to make it land like a bomb right on top of someone.
Exactly.
And two, I want that core tricked out that if I'm going up, anything in a 1-block radius is coming with me too. So, it's like, you want to blow up my Titan, that's fine. I've got a self-destruct. I'm taking you with me. So, switching gears, switching to taking it with me. we've had confirmation that Ben Affleck is now out as Batman. And, you know, there was some early speculation that Jake Gyllenhaal might be the new Batman, but then he's cast as Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, this would not be the first time that we've had a actor play more than one superhero. That used to be kind of considered ultimate taboo, but we've had, let's do the list here. We've had Michael Keaton play Batman, Birdman, and the Vulture. We've had Chris Evans play Captain America and Johnny Storm. Am I missing one? I think there was one other, if I'm not mistaken, actor that's played more than one superhero. This is probably it's gonna be one of those.
Ryan Reynolds has played Deadpool and Green Lantern.
There, thank you.
Even though people want to forget about Green Lantern.
It was funny. I had
and
Ryan
Deadpool and
Reynolds
Deadpool, right? He played two versions of it.
I was thinking one version of Deadpool than the other. There you go.
Right.
That's a prime example. I think those are three really good examples. So while Gyllenhaal certainly could do it, who do you think they're going to go for, Michael? Who's the new Batman?
Well, I'm going to probably say something controversial, but when they announced Ben Affleck as Batman for the DC movies, I was pretty much set out against not watching them. So, or you could talk about Ben Affleck. He played Daredevil and he played Batman.
There you go.
And see, there's another where they played too. You know, that's a really good question. I had heard rumors, and I can't remember the guy's name now, that they had cast it previously, but then when Ben Affleck said he would do it, he was kind of out.
Shoved aside.
Yes, so, but I can't recall who that was. So I'm a big fan of the Christian Bale Batmans. I know, again, maybe a controversial. I can't imagine him coming back in for that role. Yeah. But again, I liked him as Batman. I thought he was a very brooding Batman. So I don't know. If you look at the animated series, if you kind of look at the comics, Batman's supposed to be kind of this fairly big guy, right? He's tall, fairly muscular, and can take care of himself outside of just the money. Now, if they could go that route, which would be a complete it would be a complete diversion from any other Batman that they've cast in any of the movies or series before, outside of the animated series. So I don't know. It would be an interesting thing. We could see The Rock as Batman. That would be a complete change of identity for Batman in the movie series.
Interesting. Justin, what is your take on that? Who do you think?
You know, I'm not 100% sure who should do it. But one thing I do want to mention is that supposedly this new Batman movie is supposed to kind of center on Bruce Wayne when he's younger. So he's supposed to be, you know, just maybe starting out as Batman, which would maybe kind of get around this whole fact that they're recasting him. And then, you know, because we know that the DC expanded or the cinematic universe that we're kind of building is sort of up in the air as to whether they're actually doing it or not. You know, Aquaman was obviously very successful financially, but some of their other titles have not been. So I don't know if they have this grand plan or if this movie is supposed to be part of this the cinematic universe or not. But maybe this is one way to get around that is, you know, set it when he's younger. That way they can cast somebody who is younger. As far as like good younger actors who could be a good Bruce Wayne, that's tough. I'd have to kind of think about that. But you know, one thing I do like about it, one thing I want to mention is that I'm a huge fan of Matt Reeves. He has done an absolutely excellent job with the Planet of the Apes films. He did like the last 3 of them, I believe. So he's an absolutely excellent director, and he's also very involved with the writing. So I'm excited for this film, and he's also mentioned that it's supposedly going to have a much more noir kind of detective focus, which is also one thing I think that the Batman movies have not really explored as fully as, you know, it has been in the comics. You know, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective. So I think that's a unique take that could be really good. You know, set it when he's younger. He's got his full rogues gallery. You know, he's maybe more focused on kind of the detective side of things and kind of uncovering a mystery. So I'm excited, and I'm also very intrigued to see who they cast. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think he could do it. That would be an interesting take. But perhaps somebody a little bit younger, because I do think that's probably the direction they're going to go with.
Two names I've heard attached to the film, but whether or not, I'm not saying they're going to be Batman, but two names I heard attached were, in rumors, of course, Jack O'Connell, who people would know him from Unbroken, and the other one is an interesting idea because his stock is definitely rising, especially with his role in The Fate of Furious, and that would be Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son. And there is a young, athletic guy who could definitely carry the role for over a decade. So, interesting thoughts. We'll see how that plays out. Now, of course, we mention this because the CW network basically did a whole wave of early renewals last week. Everything from Supernatural to Riverdale to, of course, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Arrow, The Flash, Black Lightning. They have the crossover event coming, and they've said that it's been rumored that at least one major character may die in this crossover event. And of course, we also have reports that the Batgirl series is going to be coming soon. I expect to get a ton of this at San Diego Comic-Con. We'll definitely have something, hopefully, at WonderCon. They haven't announced yet what's coming in March, but I think we're still probably, we're almost 2 months away from the show, so we'll have some time for that. Justin, what do you think? What's your take on all of these shows? Were you surprised that certain shows were renewed over some others, or did it just make sense that they were all coming back?
I think it sort of makes sense from my perspective. Just to full disclosure, I haven't really been a huge watcher of the CW programs, but I do know that they're very popular, very successful. So at least from my perspective, it does sort of make sense that the ones that did get renewed got renewed. I'm curious to hear what you guys think as watchers of those shows.
Well, Michael, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so everybody was talking at the beginning of the season about Legends of Tomorrow probably being the last season of it. There was lots of talk about cancellation. It might be one of the first of the DC comic events that of each of the series that they were going to cancel. So I was happy to see that was renewed. Legends of Tomorrow, for those who don't watch it, is kind of a mix and match of different characters from the different shows who have kind of, gone on to time travel. And this past season, they were taking on fairy tale creatures. Constantine, a show that was canceled fairly early, is kind of getting a revival of his character, at least in this season of Legends of Tomorrow. He's been featured in the past couple seasons as well, but this one predominantly with them taking on the fairy tale creatures. And it's a lighthearted show, and it's not taking itself as serious as the others. So I was excited to see Legends of Tomorrow was renewed. Arrow has been my favorite since it started, so I didn't have any concerns that would be renewed. Flash, obviously, Black Lightning. Batwoman, there's a lot of talk. We saw very little of her character other than during the crossover event, but enough of the character to build kind of enough of a backstory. We know Batman has been away from Gotham for several years. We know Gotham, in its current condition, has fallen even further than the Gotham of the Batman time frame. Again, no Batman to watch over the city, so Batwoman has come in and taken over that mantle to try to restore it back to its former glory. So there's a lot of backstory that was given in a very, very, very small amount of screen time during that crossover event. So I would be really excited for Batwoman. I would love to see a lot more events where Oliver Queen or Barry Allen are actually going to spend time in Gotham. Ironically, I think they had talked about early on in Arrow that some sort of crossover with Bruce Wayne, even though it wouldn't have been Batman at the time as far as the show is concerned. But apparently Oliver Queen's family and the Wayne family in the comics have had a lot of dealings before. What I liked about the crossover event, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there was even talk about how Supergirl's cousin, obviously Superman, and Batman had this ongoing feud going on. So we even discussed, they even kind of brought in the lore of the Batman versus Superman idea as well. So the way the crossovers are working, how big they're expanding this universe, I just really enjoy it. It's hard to keep up with. I'm going to not lie that when I'm DVRing it, I spend 4 hours, 5 hours a week. And if I'm gone for a week or two and I miss a few, I'm binge watching it for a while. But really enjoy them. One of the things to note about Supernatural, I think this is their 15th season. It's crazy. I can't believe those guys are going on this long on this show. That's pretty much their entire career. So again, kudos for them to be able to continue a series that continues to get renewed for that many seasons.
Yeah, and on a side note too, we have a Creation Entertainment has got a Supernatural convention that has various stops. They have a stop coming up in Seattle, and we are giving away passes right now for people who live in the Seattle area or who can get to the Seattle area and would like to do that. We have details on the page. It's very interesting because I have a little bit of a unique, I shouldn't say unique, but I have a different perspective on it. I've watched the shows since they started for the most part, especially all the superhero shows. Last year, I got to see several of the panels at Comic-Con. My wife had covered those panels for several years because, a lot of times I'm off doing interviews and stuff, so she goes into the panel rooms and covers various things. And last year I was able to watch a few, so I got to see Black Lightning and The Flash and Arrow and Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow and all of that. And one of the things that I found very interesting was that in addition to the cast, they had a lot of the showrunners out. And they had talked about how some of the shows had some, like, I believe it was Arrow, had the current showrunner, and I'm probably wrong on her title, but I think she started off as like a script assistant back in season 1, and she worked her way up the ladder, and she's now the showrunner. And she had talked about how, she talked about how this season would start with Oliver in prison with all of the people that he had incarcerated in the past. And she talked about it having a darker tone. And then you talked about the Supergirl people talked about moving to Sunday night and introducing new characters. And we had, Black Lightning was there. And one of the things that people had, I don't want to say objected to, but I think a concern that they felt that there was a lot of overt political correctness that was going, in some people's minds, too far, in the fact that it was distracting away from the storylines because we were spending so much time introducing these new characters, so much time introducing elements that maybe did not fit, kind of like they were veering things off in a direction and people were saying, that's fine, that's entertaining, but how do you veer back to these core things that we've been establishing for years? Because it was almost like the new episodes were so focused on introducing the new characters, we're losing momentum for what we had built up in the previous years past. And I was thinking about that going, I wonder if this is basically a vote of confidence because not only by an early renewal, because they're essentially going, February's coming up. We're in February. This is the sweeps month. And even in the day and age of DVR and streaming and binge watching, that's still important. And you had mentioned, Michael, Legends of Tomorrow, and I agree with you. There are some episodes that I go, wow, this is fun. And then there's some you go, wow, this is kind of silly, and I'm kind of losing the motivation, and why are we going after this and this and this? And it, I worry that it was almost like at times a monster of the week, as in what crazy time frame can we put them in with what crazy scenario and go, rather than having a cohesive plot. I've had a little bit of a hard time getting into Black Lightning season 2 compared to season 1, because season 1 you could see them building. Season 2, it's kind of like spinning their wheels because they don't seem to be moving forward. They don't seem to progressing. It seems to be more of a let's focus more on the young girls and their emergence as powered individuals, and Black Lightning is in the background. And here's Tobias going out there. But again, I sit there and I go, this is only the first half of the season. I've also noticed there haven't been a lot of what I would call over heavy budget shows, a lot of FX heavy shows. I have a feeling they're building to a pretty epic second half for a lot of these shows. And especially The Flash, because, that's another prime example. Love The Flash. It seems like all the emphasis has been on his daughter and, establishing elongated man, and that's fine. And, there's that part of me going, oh, dear God, another speedster or another, but something's coming. And that's when I'm sitting there going, this is why CW is doing that. I think it's their way of saying, we understand the audience has some concerns. I remember before they went into season 7 of Arrow, there were some rumors going around that certain members of the cast were like, well, my continued involvement is going to be largely dependent on where the scripts go and where the stories go. And I think you can see that they're definitely building to something, because I think this was CW's very, very clear statement to the fans, to the cast, to the creative, to the writers, saying, we understand where you're going. There are good things ahead. We're not going to just keep spinning our wheels with stories that some people say, well, they're not really going anywhere. They're not building on anything. I think they're basically just setting a little bit of, well, it's a stall tactic in some ways. They're distracting you with some of these stories to come at you full on with something much more epic down the road. So I'd be very curious to see where they go, because I do think they are going to start shocking people. I do think it is possible now that, especially with Arrow, now that they're in season 7, I wouldn't be shocked if a couple people get bumped off along the way, because that is the way that they're going to make it fresh. Is they're going to say, okay, look at the shows. Well, I would say Barry's safe. I'm sure Oliver's safe. Legends of Tomorrow has changed cast up so much. You never know about that. Would Black Lightning be crazy enough to kill off his wife or one of his daughters? You never know. Now, of course, no one stays dead in the superhero universe, but can you imagine if Barry lost Iris after we had a whole season about him doing everything he could to save her? And maybe the daughter decides to blame her dad. There are all sorts of possibilities, and I think that's where we're going. So just my 2 cents on that. Well, guys, we certainly covered a lot of interesting stuff. We talked about that. And before I forget, since we were talking about superheroes, I do not want to forget this. Now, if you have the CW, if you have the DC streaming service, this is available for you. But if not, right here, I want to make sure everybody gets a good look at this one here. I'll just bring this up here. This is the brand new Warner Brothers animated thing here, the animated superhero show. This is Reign of the Supermen, and of course you've got all the bonus features, you've got all the behind the scenes and all of that, and this is where you get to see all of the superheroes getting together and mixing it up. It's on my watch list for tomorrow, but we've got Superman and we've got all sorts of well, I'll just leave it at that. If you like Superman, if you like the DC heroes, there they are. And, what do you guys, what? I'm going to actually add one more thing before we close up. So we had the whole issue. We talked about this in depth. We don't need to go into the controversy part about Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn. Well, now we hear that James is going to write and direct the next Suicide Squad movie. And, and then we have Lee Wannell, who is going to be directing The Invisible Man. So that basically implies the Dark Universe is not entirely gone. And he's also writing a draft to remake Escape from New York. So, Michael, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it'll certainly add some new life into the Suicide Squad, having James Gunn in there as the director. Obviously, we've seen what he can do with Guardians, so obviously bringing him in to do a Suicide Squad movie, which would have kind of the same tone, I want to say, and kind of an evil version of that tone. I think that'd be good. I think it's ironic that he's now, with all the controversy, he's now going over from a Marvel universe, and then they're bringing him on to do the DC universe. So it just kind of goes to show you that controversy for one may not be controversy for others. For those watching YouTube, I've got our own kiddie bowl going on too, with Zoe on my shoulder. So anyways, that's just kind of my take on that.
And Justin, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so it's actually not super unprecedented because they got Joss Whedon. You know, he did the first two Avengers movies, and then he went on to work on Justice League after Zack Snyder exited the project. I think for this, there is definitely a lot more controversy about this just because of how James Gunn got fired, and you know, he obviously wanted to make more Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but perhaps this could be a good outlet for him because this does seem like a pretty close kind of project that could kind of utilize that same style, and he could kind of make, you know, or he can bring a lot that he brought to Guardians of the Galaxy to Suicide Squad. It seemed like Suicide Squad tried to do that kind of weird, kind of funny, quirky style that Guardians of the Galaxy did, but it just didn't do it as well as James Gunn did for those two movies. So I think, you know, he'll probably make a good movie just because it's definitely his style. He's very good at the ensemble, like I said, kind of quirky and weird movies, just with like a band of misfits kind of thing. So I think he could bring a lot to the table here. So we'll have to see. I think the bigger question is kind of the DC film universe as it stands. I was kind of talking about it earlier. We don't really know exactly what Warner Brothers is kind of thinking with this. I don't know if it was obvious at first they were trying to plan this out and very deliberately that they were all kind of feeding into each other. But, after Suicide Squad and Justice League and Batman vs. Superman not doing very well, we have to kind of watch what they're doing, I guess, and kind of see that it seems like they're kind of taking a one-by-one approach and just trying to make a good movie each subsequent project. And I think that's probably a better strategy here for them, going forward, that maybe eventually down the road they can start doing crossovers again and bring this all kind of together in a more natural way. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how this goes.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week and enjoy the game tomorrow. Take care.
All right, got it.